Hello, everyone. Today we're moving forward at a little faster pace through books 2 through 4 of the Aeneid. In books 2 and 3, we'll hear Aeneas speaking from his own perspective on the fall of Troy, his escape from destruction, and his wanderings through the Mediterranean. We'll end with the short lived love story between Aeneas and Dido, which inevitably ends in tragedy. Remember that Aeneas is telling this story to Dido from his own point of view. He begins the story with the Trojan horse. This is the most famous account in literature of this Greek ruse. Told from a Trojan and Roman point of view, we are given a new perspective on the Greeks as deceitful and untrustworthy people. A man named Sinon, pretending to be a Greek deserter, tells King Priam and the Trojans that the giant wooden horse is an offering to Minerva, that is, Athena, to appease the goddess before their voyage home. To destroy it would be to offend her. This fake deserter is named Sinon, whose name is literally Latin for yes, no. It's a name characteristic of deceit. The Trojans believe this man, despite the warnings of a Trojan priest named Laocoon, who delivers the famous line, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." In a frightening scene, Minerva sends a giant sea serpent that devours Laocoon and his sons before the Trojans' eyes. This finally convinces them not to destroy the wooden horse, but to bring it inside their gates. The rest is a familiar story. The Trojans drunkenly celebrate the end of the war, and when night falls and they're all asleep, the Greeks hiding in the horse come out, open the city's gates, and the Greek army floods in, subjecting the Trojan citizens to slaughter, rape, and plunder. It is at this point where Aeneas has a sudden dream. The blood-stained ghost of Hector appears to him and insists that Aeneas escape. Quote, "Into your hands Troy entrusts her holy things, her household gods. Take them with you as comrades in your fortunes. Seek a city for them. Once you have roved the seas, erect great walls at last to house the gods of Troy." End quote. But Aeneas at this point ignores Hector's advice to escape with such sacred objects. Instead, he has a death wish, to go down fighting for his country. Not knowing his higher purpose, he wants to go down in a blaze of glory like Hector himself. He is ignorant of the fact that this is not the home country he should be fighting for, but rather a future country in Italy. Aeneas joins a band of Trojan fighters and kills many Greeks before being outnumbered. He flees to the palace where the fighting is thickest, and there he sees such sights as King Priam himself being slaughtered by Achilles' son Pyrrhus, otherwise known as Neoptolemus. At this point, Aeneas is thinking only about revenge, and soon he comes upon Helen herself. He blames Helen as the cause of the whole Trojan War, and why his city is now being destroyed. But just as he is about to kill her, Aeneas' mother Venus intervenes. Compare this to the scene in the Iliad, where Athena prevents Achilles from killing Agamemnon. Venus tells her son that the destruction of Troy is not Helen's fault, but it is the doing of the gods, and Jupiter's plan all along. She allows Aeneas to see how far the divine orchestration of events is truly responsible. Quote, "There, yes, where you see the massive ramparts shattered, blocks wrenched from blocks, the billowing smoke and ash, it's Neptune himself, prizing loose with his giant trident the foundation stones of Troy. He's making the walls quake, ripping up the entire city by her roots. Already up on the heights, look around, turn around and look, there's Pallas, holding the fortress, flaming out of the clouds, her savage Gorgon flaring, even Father himself. He's filling the Greek hearts with courage, stamina, Jove in person spurring the gods to fight with Trojan armies." End quote. Venus tells Aeneas to go to his house and save his family from destruction and evacuate the city. Aeneas, his father Anchises, his son Iülus, and his wife Creusa evacuate and gather at the rendezvous point outside the city with other evacuees. To get there, Aeneas famously carries his father Anchises on his back, along with the statues of his country's gods. This iconic image has been depicted in artwork from antiquity to the modern era. It shows Aeneas displaying his pietas, his duty and devotion to his family, his gods, and his mission to bring the Trojans safely to a new home. When Aeneas reaches his rendezvous point, he realizes that he had never looked behind him to see if his wife was still there. She was gone. Interestingly enough, we may take this as a sign that Aeneas might be prone to leaving behind his lovers as he pursues his goals. Aeneas turns back to the city to search for his wife Creusa, and instead of finding her in the flesh, her ghost appears to him, proving that she is now dead. Like Hector in his dream, we once again see how the spirits of the dead possess the gift of prophecy. Creus's ghost tells him to seek Italy, where he is destined to marry a new wife. As there's nothing more he can do, Aeneas rejoins his band of refugees, and Book 2 comes to an end. In Book 3, Aeneas recounts the 7 years wandering across the Mediterranean in search of a new home. They try to find cities first in Thrace, then in Crete, without success, as these places prove inhospitable. Finally, they hit on the true meaning of the prophecies that they collected along the way. It is Italy they must seek. As they journey west, Aeneas and the Trojans reprise a few episodes from the Odyssey and the Argonautica. Like Jason and his crew, they encounter the Harpies who steal and spoil their dinner. Thanks to the prophet Helenus, who stands in for Circe, they are advised to steer clear of Scylla and Charybdis and take the long way around Sicily. Here they reach the land of the Cyclops, and even rescue a member of Odysseus' crew, who was marooned there. Whereas Odysseus carelessly leaves a man behind, Aeneas shows mercy even to a former enemy, and brings him aboard. Before leaving Sicily, however, tragedy strikes. Aeneas' aged father Anchises passes away before the fleet gets underway. This brings Aeneas to the conclusion of his story, and the end of Book 3. By the beginning of Book 4, Dido is now head over heels for Aeneas. Virgil's description of her inner state recalls the torments of love inflicted on Medea in the Argonautica. Quote, "But the queen, too long she had suffered the pain of love, hour by hour nursing the wound with her life-blood, consumed by the fire buried in her heart. The man's courage, the sheer pride of his line, they all come pressing home to her, over and over. His looks, his words, they pierce her heart and cling. No peace, no rest for her body. Love will give her none." End quote. Dido's torments of passion also resemble those of Medea, in that by pursuing a relationship with Aeneas, she would be betraying her oath of fidelity to her dead husband. It takes Dido's sister Anna to persuade her that she shouldn't be ashamed to marry Aeneas, but also that joining the Carthaginians and Trojans would be politically expedient as well, since Carthage is surrounded by hostile kingdoms. It is not long before Juno intervenes. As Dido and Aeneas go hunting together, Juno causes a storm that forces the two of them to take shelter in a cave. It is in this cave that they inevitably have sex. Dido then covers her shame by proclaiming that she and Aeneas are now married. Aeneas becomes like Odysseus on Circe's or Calypso's island, wasting his time. And as for Odysseus, Jupiter eventually sends Mercury to remind Aeneas that he must set sail for Italy in order to fulfill his duty to the gods. Aeneas' reaction to Mercury's message is telling of his character. Quote, "Then Aeneas was truly overwhelmed by the vision. Stunned, his hackles bristle with fear, his voice chokes in his throat. He yearns to be gone, to desert this land he loves." End quote. Aeneas does not hesitate to obey the gods and place his mission above all private desires. Despite his personal feelings for Dido, he steels his resolve to set sail for Italy. He tries in vain to persuade Dido that he has no choice in the matter, and that they must break off their relationship. The gods' will trumps all. And besides, he disagrees that the relationship was anything you would call marriage. Dido, on the other hand, is beside herself with rage. The will of the gods doesn't matter to her one bit. She lashes out at Aeneas for betraying her. But again, this doesn't move him. Quote, "Aeneas is driven by duty now." End quote. Dido's final reaction to Aeneas' departure is to commit suicide, and to do so in dramatic fashion. She builds a giant funeral pyre topped by the bed that Dido and Aeneas had shared. That she will kill herself on this bed by falling on Aeneas' own sword is clearly symbolic that her affair with Aeneas had caused her own death. Before running herself through, though, she utters a final curse. Quote, "And you, my Carthaginians, harry with hatred all his line, his race to come. Make that offering to my ashes, send it down below. No love between our peoples, ever, no pacts of peace. Come rising up from my bones, you avenger still unknown. War between all our peoples, all their children, endless war." End quote. In Dido's curse, Virgil identifies the origin of the future rivalry between Romans and Carthaginians, a rivalry that raged for over a century during the Punic Wars. The avenger still unknown is the Carthaginian general Hannibal, who will invade Italy with elephants and deal the Romans a series of crushing defeats. Such was the price of Aeneas' betrayal. Later writers refer to Book 4 as the, quote, tragedy of Dido, end quote. They view Dido as a tragic victim of circumstances who should earn our pity. Not only that, but they argue that this episode is subversive, that it is a way that Virgil undermines Aeneas's heroism by lamenting the damage it causes to innocent people along the way. Is Aeneas at fault for casting Dido aside in order to answer the call of the gods? Is Dido simply another feminine obstacle, a temptress, such as those faced by Odysseus? With Book 4, we see in a powerful and complex way the personal costs of putting the greater good ahead of oneself. Next time, we'll continue our way through the Aeneid with the next 4 books of the epic.